Scarlet Lies of Manhattan. Chapter 1, The Ghost at the Gala. The crystal chandeliers of the Voss Foundation annual charity gala spilled cold, dazzling light over the entire ballroom of the Manhattan Grand Hotel. It was the most exclusive night of the year in New York's elite circle. Wall Street tycoons, social celebrities, political dignitaries, and luxury brand heirs gathered here, every corner filled with the clink of crystal glasses, the rustle of custom haute couture gowns, and polite, hypocritical laughter. At the center of the ballroom, standing on the highest platform, was Elias Voss. He wore a tailored black Italian suit, his tie neatly knotted, his broad shoulders straight and cold. His sharp jawline was tense, his deep charcoal eyes devoid of any warmth, sweeping indifferently over the bustling crowd below. At 29, Elias had already completely taken over the Voss empire, controlling half of Manhattan's real estate and financial markets. He was young, powerful, and devastatingly handsome, but also famously cold-blooded, moody, and untouchable. 5 years had passed, but the entire upper class still remembered the story of the young Voss's broken love. The mysterious disappearance of his fiancée Vivienne Moore had turned the once passionate young man into an emotionless machine. No one dared to mention Vivienne's name in front of him. No one dared to test his bottom line. "Mr. Voss, the donation list is ready." The assistant stood respectfully beside him, lowering his voice carefully. "All the guests have arrived. We can start the speech anytime." Elias did not respond immediately. His gaze was wandering aimlessly over the crowd, his thin lips pressed into a cold, straight line. There was always a faint, unreachable gloom lingering in his eyes, a scar that never faded. He still remembered the last night with Vivienne. The rain was pouring down in Manhattan. She stood in front of his villa gate, her eyes red, saying nothing, and then vanished from his world without a single farewell explanation. For 5 years, he had searched every corner of the country. He had used all his resources, overturned every possible clue, but found nothing. She was like a ghost, erased completely from his life. Until tonight. A slight commotion broke out at the entrance of the ballroom. Elias's eyes snapped over instinctively. And in that second, his entire body froze. Time seemed to stop flowing. The noisy chatter around him faded into a blurred background hum. The dazzling crystal lights lost their color. All his senses were locked on the figure standing at the door. She stood in the shallow light of the entrance, wearing a simple plain white midi dress, no exaggerated jewelry, no gorgeous makeup. Her long chestnut hair fell softly over her shoulders, her fair skin glowing faintly under the hotel lights. And her face. It was exactly Vivienne's face. The same delicate eyebrows, the same clear eye shape, the same soft lip line. Every contour was identical to the woman who had haunted his dreams and nightmares for 5 whole years. Elias's knuckles tightened abruptly, the champagne glass in his hand creaking faintly under his grip. His pupils contracted sharply, a storm of shock, rage, longing, and madness surging wildly in his deep eyes. It was her. It had to be her. She was back. After 5 years of cruel disappearance, she finally dared to show up in front of him again. Seraphina Moore did not know she had become the focus of the most terrifying man in the entire ballroom. She had never liked such extravagant, noisy upper-class banquets. If it were not for her aunt's repeated pleading, if her family was not trapped in a financial crisis and needed to rely on the Voss Foundation's charity funding to tide over the difficulties, she would never have stepped into this luxurious and cold mansion. She was used to living in the quiet suburbs, painting flowers and plants in the sunlit studio all day, far away from the noisy upper-class disputes and glamorous Vanity Fairs. She lowered her eyes slightly, trying to reduce her sense of existence, holding a small handbag tightly in her palm, and planned to walk quietly to the corner seat arranged by her aunt. But before she could take a few steps forward, a tall, oppressive shadow suddenly blocked her way. The surrounding air turned cold in an instant. Seraphina raised her head in confusion, and her breath caught the moment she saw the man's face. She knew him. Elias Voss. The man her sister had loved deeply, the man who had been broken by her sister's departure, the most powerful and dangerous man in Manhattan. His eyes were locked firmly on her face, scorching and cold, crazy and desperate, mixed with endless resentment and longing, so intense that it almost swallowed her whole. Seraphina's heart beat violently, and she subconsciously stepped back half a step, a trace of panic flashing in her clear eyes. Before she could speak, the man's cold, low voice sounded above her head, every word sharp and cold, like ice blades scraping her eardrums. "Where have you been hiding for 5 years, Vivienne?" Seraphina's body stiffened completely. Her lips trembled slightly, and she forced herself to calm down, her voice soft and weak, trying to correct his misunderstanding. "Sir, you're mistaken. I'm not Vivienne." The moment her voice fell, Elias's thin lips curved into a cold, mocking arc. He leaned down slowly, his tall figure completely enveloping her, the cold scent of cedar and expensive whiskey wrapping tightly around her, leaving her no room to escape. His fingers suddenly lifted, pinching her chin forcefully, forcing her to look up at him, forcing her to meet his stormy eyes. His grip was rough and painful, leaving a faint burning mark on her delicate skin. "Not Vivienne," he repeated in a hoarse, dangerous voice, his eyes sweeping every inch of her face greedily and sharply. "You dare to look me in the eyes and say that again? Your face is exactly the same as hers. Your eyes, your nose, your lips, everything is the same. Do you think you can fool me with a simple denial? After hiding for 5 years, you finally learned to play innocent games." Seraphina's eyes turned red with grievance and pain. She struggled slightly, but the man's strength was overwhelming, and she could not break free at all. The surrounding guests had already noticed the strange situation here, and countless curious, probing, and mocking eyes gathered on them, whispering and discussing in low voices. "Who is that girl? She looks exactly like Vivienne Moore. Is Vivienne back? But everyone said she disappeared 5 years ago. No way. I heard Vivienne betrayed Elias and ran away with someone else. How dare she come back to the Voss banquet?" All the whispers pierced Seraphina's ears like thin needles. She felt ashamed and helpless, her eye sockets burning with hot tears that were about to fall. She had endured this kind of misunderstanding for countless times since she was a child. Everyone only remembered the glamorous, bold, and outstanding twin sister Vivienne, while she was always the obscure, ordinary shadow, a substitute who looked exactly like her sister. She thought she could escape all this by staying low-key, but fate still pushed her into this desperate predicament. Elias watched the layer of wet mist floating in her eyes, watched her fragile and helpless appearance, and his heart, which had been dead for 5 years, trembled violently for no reason. But the tremor was quickly covered by accumulated anger and betrayal. He thought she was pretending to be pitiful, pretending to be innocent, just like she had done countless times before leaving him. "Don't cry." His voice turned colder, more ruthless. "Your fake tears are the most disgusting thing to me. Since you've come back, don't even think about running away again." He lowered his head, leaning close to her ear, his breath cold and dangerous, every word a cruel declaration of possession. "This time, I will lock you by my side forever. I will make you pay for the 5 years you made me suffer." Before Seraphina could react, Elias had already let go of her chin, grabbed her wrist forcefully, and dragged her straight out of the crowded ballroom under the gaze of countless stunned guests. Her small white high heels stumbled on the smooth marble floor. She struggled weakly, begging in a trembling voice. "Let me go. Mr. Voss, you really have the wrong person. Please listen to me." But Elias turned a deaf ear. His steps were fast and ruthless, dragging her through the luxurious corridor, all the way to the exclusive elevator at the end of the corridor. The elevator door closed slowly, isolating all the noise and gaze outside. In the narrow and enclosed elevator space, the oppressive atmosphere was almost suffocating. Elias leaned against the elevator wall, his deep eyes staring at her tightly, never leaving her face for a single second, as if he was afraid that she would turn into a wisp of smoke and disappear again in the next second. Seraphina leaned tremblingly in the corner of the elevator, her wrist already red from his grip, tears finally sliding down her pale cheeks silently. She knew it from this moment on. Her peaceful and ordinary life was completely over. From the moment she stepped into this banquet, she was trapped in a bloody, sinful, and desperate love feud that belonged only to her sister and Elias Voss. Chapter 2, Captive of His Obsession. The elevator hummed softly, ascending steadily toward the top floor of the Manhattan Grand Hotel. The confined space muffled all sound from the world below, leaving only the rapid, uneven sound of Seraphina's breathing and the low, restrained tension rolling off Elias's body in thick waves. Seraphina pressed her back flat against the cold metal wall, her shoulders hunched inward as she tried to shrink into herself. The faint sting on her wrist throbbed relentlessly, a vivid reminder of how brutally he had dragged her away, how little her resistance mattered against his overwhelming power. She wiped her wet cheeks with the back of her hand, her lashes still clumped with unshed tears. She had long grown used to living in Vivienne's shadow, to being overlooked and mistaken for her dazzling twin, but never had she been trapped in a situation so cruel and inescapable. "I have spent 5 years waiting for you to come back." Elias's voice cut through the silence first, low and gravelly, laced with a raw, unhinged bitterness that made Seraphina's blood run cold. He pushed off the elevator wall and took a slow step toward her, his towering frame casting a dark shadow that swallowed her whole. Every movement was deliberate, predatory, like a starved beast cornering its long-lost prey. "I've drowned myself in work, in alcohol, in every meaningless thing I could find, just to forget the way you left me standing in the rain that night." His charcoal eyes darkened, flickering with the ghosts of 5 years of agony and sleepless nights. "I thought you were dead. I prayed you were dead. Because death would have been kinder than the quiet, cruel abandonment you handed me." Seraphina's throat tightened, a sharp, helpless ache spreading through her chest. She wanted to scream, to explain, to tell him that she was not the one who'd broken his heart, that she had never been the girl who'd betrayed him without a second thought. But she knew her words were useless. Not now, not when his mind was clouded by 5 years of obsession and grief. To Elias Voss, there was only one more sister who mattered, only Vivienne existed in his world. "Mr. Voss, please." Her voice was fragile, broken, barely louder than a whisper. "You're blaming the wrong person. I never hurt you. I never even knew what happened between you and my sister." Her feeble denial only fueled his rage. Elias let out a sharp, humorless laugh, his jaw tightening with suppressed fury. He reached out again, his fingers brushing the soft curve of her cheek, his touch burning hot yet ice-cold all at once. The pads of his fingers traced her brow, her nose, the full curve of her lower lip, memorizing every detail, as he had done 1,000 times in his dreams. "Still lying." He muttered the words like a curse, his gaze locked on hers, intense enough to drown her. "You always were good at playing the innocent angel, weren't you? Sweet smiles, soft voice, delicate tears, all a mask to hide how ruthless you truly are. You left me to rot in misery for 5 years, and now you come back wearing this shy, timid act. Do you think I'm still the same naive fool who'd fall for your tricks?" Seraphina's eyes flooded with fresh tears, spilling over her lash line and sliding down her cheeks to soak into the collar of her white dress. The injustice of it all suffocated her. For 24 years, Vivienne had been the bold, reckless, selfish sister, while she had always been the quiet, compliant one, hiding in the background to avoid overshadowing her twin. Yet now, she was paying for every sin her sister had committed. The elevator dinged softly, breaking the tense atmosphere, and the metal doors slid open to reveal the exclusive presidential suite on the top floor, Elias's private suite, reserved only for his most personal use. Before Seraphina could gather her wits to run, Elias's arm wrapped tightly around her waist, yanking her flush against his chest. His cedar and whiskey scent engulfed her completely, leaving no room for air or escape. He carried her into the suite effortlessly, kicking the door shut behind them with a loud thud that echoed through the empty luxury room. The suite was minimalist and cold, decorated in black, white, and grey marble tones, luxurious yet lifeless, exactly like the man who owned it. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire glittering skyline of Manhattan, the city's neon lights flickering dimly against the night sky, a stark contrast to the suffocating tension inside the room. Elias set her down on the soft velvet sofa, but his hand never left her waist, pinning her in place so she could not flee. 5 years ago, you walked out of my life without a single word. He leaned down, his face inches from hers, his eyes swirling with a chaotic mix of longing, anger, and desperate possession. Tonight, you walked back into it. And I swear to you, you will never walk out again. Seraphina trembled violently, her palms pressing weakly against his hard chest in a futile attempt to push him away. This is kidnapping. You can't do this. I'm not Vivienne, my name is Seraphina. Seraphina Moore. She practically sobbed the name out, begging him to listen, to finally see the truth. For a split second, Elias's body stiffened. The name hung in the air, foreign and unfamiliar, slicing through his obsessive haze. He had never heard of a second Moore twin. The world had only ever spoken of Vivienne, the brilliant, beautiful, charismatic socialite, who had captured his heart and then shattered it into irreparable pieces. But the moment passed in an instant, swallowed by his years of accumulated pain. He dismissed the name as a desperate lie, a new tactic she'd invented to evade his punishment. Seraphina. He repeated the name coldly, mocking, lacing every syllable. A new alias. A new identity to hide behind. You've always been dramatic, Vivienne. But this game grows tiresome. He caught both of her trembling wrists in one hand, pinning them above her head with effortless strength, leaving her completely defenseless beneath him. You want me to believe you're someone else? Then prove it. His gaze dropped to her quivering lips, his breath fanning over her burning skin. Prove to me that you're not the woman who swore to love me forever, then abandoned me without a second glance. Seraphina had no proof. No one in the upper class knew she existed. Her own family had always buried her in Vivienne's shadow, too busy glorifying their elder daughter to acknowledge the quiet younger twin. She was a ghost, just like Vivienne had been for 5 years, only her ghost was alive, invisible, and forced to atone for another's sins. I can't prove it to you right now, she gasped out, tears streaming unchecked down her face, but it's the truth. Please wait, please ask my family, ask anyone who knows us. I don't need anyone else. Elias cut her off sharply, his eyes darkening with a dangerous resolve. All I need is you. Right here. Right now. He had spent 5 years hollowed out by grief, every day consumed by the void Vivienne had left behind. Now that the face that haunted his every dream was finally in his arms, he would never let go, no matter what lies she told, no matter what excuses she wove. Even if she was lying, even if she was playing him again, he would keep her. He would chain her to his side until the debt of 5 years of suffering was paid in full. You will stay with me. His voice was low, unyielding, a cold command that left no room for argument. From today onward, you belong to me. No more running. No more hiding. No more leaving me alone. Seraphina's heart sank to the bottom, cold and heavy with despair. She stared up at his handsome, ruthless face, at the obsession blazing in his deep eyes, and felt a sharp, bitter conflict tear through her chest. She had loved Elias Voss for years, ever since she was a teenage girl watching him from the shadows, watching him love her sister fiercely and devotedly. She had always known their love was impossible, a one-sided crush doomed to never see the light of day. She had accepted her fate, content to love him silently from afar, never daring to covet what belonged to Vivienne. But now, fate had twisted everything into a cruel joke. He had her in his grasp, loved her face, craved her presence, yet he loved her only as a replacement, a ghost of the sister he truly grieved. It was the sweetest, most torturous punishment imaginable. "What if I refuse?" she whispered, her voice broken and small, a last flicker of stubborn defiance in her despair. Elias's lips curved into a cold, possessive smile, his thumb brushing gently over her tear-streaked cheek, his touch contradictory, soft yet brutal. "Then I'll ruin every single thing you hold dear." He said the words calmly, without malice, yet every syllable was a deadly threat. "Your family's company, your quiet little painting studio, every peaceful life you've built in my absence. I have the power to take everything from you. And I will, if you dare to try and leave me again." He meant every word. Elias Voss did not make empty threats. He was the king of Manhattan's elite, a man who crushed enemies and overturned empires with a single word. A quiet, unknown girl like her stood no chance against his power. Seraphina closed her eyes tightly, hot tears seeping through her closed lids. She had no choice. She was trapped. "So this is my punishment," she murmured hoarsely, her voice laced with helpless sorrow, being forced to live as her shadow forever. To pay for her mistakes. Elias's fingers tightened slightly on her wrists, his gaze flickering with a strange, unnameable emotion for a split second, confusion, faint tenderness, guilt, all gone before it could be recognized. He ignored her words, leaning closer until their foreheads touched, their breaths mingling in the cold air. "Stay," he repeated, his voice softer now, laced with a raw, desperate longing he could no longer hide. "Just stay. Even if it's a lie. Even if you're pretending. I don't care anymore. Just don't leave me again." The ruthless billionaire's facade cracked for the first time that night, revealing the broken, lonely man beneath, a man who had spent half a decade drowning in loss, clinging to the only ghost that could save him from his own darkness. Seraphina's heart ached violently, torn between pity for his suffering and agony over her own doomed fate. She opened her eyes, her clear, tear-filled gaze locking onto his stormy one, and whispered a quiet, defeated answer that sealed her fate. Okay. She would stay. She would live as Vivienne's substitute. She would bear his hatred, his obsession, his cruel tenderness, and watch the man she loved love a version of her that was never real. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a terrible, foolish hope bloomed. What if, one day, he finally saw her? The real Seraphina Moore, not the ghost of his lost love. She did not know then that hope would be the cruelest lie of all. That the storm of secrets, betrayal, and hidden feelings was only just beginning to rage. Chapter 3, The Substitute's Residence. The next morning broke pale and grey over Manhattan. Thin fog clung to the glass skyscrapers, blurring the sharp edges of the financial district and muffling the city's usual roar into a distant, hollow hum. Seraphina woke up in a bed that was not her own. The sheets were cold silk, crisp and unyielding against her skin, smelling of Elias's signature cedar and faint burnt whiskey. The room was vast, sterile, and aggressively luxurious, an upper-floor private suite in Elias's exclusive residential tower, far removed from the sun-faded suburban cottage, where she had spent her quiet, unassuming adulthood. She sat up slowly, her limbs heavy with exhaustion, her wrist still marked with faint pink bruising from his brutal grip the night before. Every muscle in her body ached, a physical reminder that she was no longer a free woman. She was a guest here, in the Voss residence, but not a welcome one. A captive. A substitute. The bedroom door clicked open without warning. Elias stepped inside, freshly showered and dressed in a crisp charcoal business suit. His dark hair was neatly styled, the exhaustion of the previous night scrubbed clean from his features, leaving only his usual cold, impassive billionaire mask firmly in place. There was no trace of the broken, desperate man, who had begged her not to leave him. No tremor in his voice, no softness in his eyes. He was distant again, untouchable, cruel. He tossed a designer garment bag onto the foot of the bed, the fabric landing with a soft rustle. Get dressed. His tone was flat, authoritative, no room for negotiation. You're moving into this penthouse permanently. Your old apartment's belongings have already been transferred here. Seraphina's breath caught. Panic coiled tight in her chest. You had no right to do that. I didn't agree to move in with you. Elias's gaze lifted, sharp and cutting, locking onto her face. You agreed to stay. This is what staying means. He stepped closer, his tall frame casting a long shadow over her huddled form on the bed. His eyes scanned her face slowly, meticulously, as if inspecting a piece of property he had just reclaimed after years of loss. You will occupy this suite. You will attend every public event I require. You will play the role of my returned fiancée perfectly. His voice was low, unyielding. In return, your family's failing company gets full Voss funding. No bankruptcy, no scandal, no ruin. Seraphina closed her eyes briefly. She had known this bargain was coming. It was the devil's trade. Her freedom, her identity, her dignity, in exchange for her family's survival. When she opened her eyes again, her voice was quiet and defeated. And if I make a mistake? If I act unlike her? A cold, bitter smile tugged at Elias's lips. Then you pay the price. And so do they. He turned to leave, pausing in the doorway, his back rigid. Breakfast is downstairs in 10 minutes. Do not be late. I do not tolerate tardiness from you again. The door shut firmly behind him, leaving Seraphina alone in the empty, lavish room. She stared at the designer bag on the bed, her throat burning with unshed tears. Inside were Vivienne-style clothes, sophisticated, bold, glamorous garments that belonged to a woman who was brave, selfish, unapologetically alive. Nothing that belonged to her. With trembling hands, she unzipped the bag and pulled out a cream-colored silk dress, elegant and sharp. As she slipped it on, she caught her reflection in the full-length mirror on the wall. For a heartbeat, she was stunned. It was Vivienne staring back at her. Same face, same hair, same graceful bone structure. The soft, timid light in her eyes was the only difference, the only proof that she was a separate person at all. She traced her own cheek with her fingertips, a hollow ache spreading through her chest. I am here. I am alive. But I am no longer me. Downstairs, the dining room was sleek and modern, floor-to-ceiling windows flooding the space with grey morning light. The table was set with fine porcelain and crystal, untouched except for Elias's single cup of black coffee. He sat at the head of the table, scrolling through work emails on his tablet, his expression blank and unreadable. When Seraphina entered, his gaze lifted briefly. His eyes lingered on her dressed-up form, and for a split second, a flicker of raw, hungry longing crossed his face, before he masked it with cold indifference once more. You look like yourself again, he muttered, the words sharp with unspoken grief. Like Vivienne, he meant. Seraphina sat down silently, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She did not dare correct him anymore. Every correction only fueled his anger, every truth only sounded like a lie to his grief-blinded mind. They ate in complete silence. The tension between them was thick enough to choke on, a tangled web of hatred, obsession, unacknowledged longing, and cruel misunderstanding. Halfway through the meal, Elias's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Seraphina saw the name flash across the display, Julian Cross. She froze. Julian. Her closest friend, the only person who had ever seen her, who had ever known the quiet, painting-loving girl hidden behind Vivienne's shadow. Elias answered the call, his voice icy. Dr. Cross. The voice on the other end was warm, steady, calm even through the phone line. Elias. I'm calling to inquire about Seraphina Moore. I haven't heard from her since the charity gala. I need to know she's safe. Elias's gaze snapped instantly to Seraphina's face, sharp and suspicious. Seraphina. He repeated the name slowly, dangerously, like testing a blade's edge. You know her. I've known her for years, Julian replied evenly, unafraid of the hostility in Elias's tone. She's my friend. And whatever game you're playing with her, Voss, you need to let her go. She's not yours. Elias's knuckles whitened around his phone. His eyes darkened with possessive fury, every muscle in his body coiling with dangerous tension. He ended the call abruptly, tossing the device onto the table with a sharp clatter. His gaze locked onto Seraphina's, blazing with jealous rage. Who is he to you? Seraphina's heart raced, panic flaring hot in her chest. He's just my friend. Just a friend. Elias stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the marble floor. He crossed the table in 2 long strides, towering over her, trapping her against her chair. His voice dropped to a dangerous, husky snarl. He knows your name. He knows you. No one knows you. No one but him. The realization seemed to slice through him like a knife, sharp, painful, infinitely enraging. What else has he been hiding from me? What else have you been hiding? Chapter 4. Jealousy and Unspoken Softness. Seraphina's back pressed tight against the leather chair, her breath catching in her throat. Elias's face was inches from hers, his eyes dark and stormy, consumed by a jealousy so raw it bordered on violent. She had never seen him like this, not last night, not in his cold threats, not in his desperate grief. This was something far more dangerous, Elias Voss unraveling, realizing there were pieces of her life he did not own. I've hidden nothing, she whispered, her voice trembling but firm. Julian is simply my friend. He's known me since I was a teenager. He's the only person who ever differentiates me from my sister. Elias stared down at her, his gaze searching, piercing, as if trying to dig through every layer of her lies and truths. For 5 years, he had obsessed over Vivienne's absence, convinced every secret belonged only to his lost love. Now he was faced with another girl with her face, a girl who had an entire hidden life, hidden connections, a hidden name he had never bothered to learn. It infuriated him. It unsettled him. It terrified him. Why him? He muttered hoarsely, almost to himself. Why is he the only one who knows you? Seraphina's eyes glistened with quiet sorrow. Because no one else ever cared enough to look. Everyone only sees Vivienne. No one bothers to see me. The words landed softly in the tense room, hanging in the air like a quiet accusation. Elias froze. For a long moment, he said nothing. The rage in his eyes dimmed, replaced by a strange, confused ache he could not name. He had spent 5 years mourning a woman who left him. And all along, there had been another girl, quiet, gentle, enduring, living in the same shadow, bearing the same face, loving him silently from the sidelines. The thought disturbed him deeply. He stepped back slowly, releasing the suffocating pressure he had placed on her. His jaw was still tight, his expression conflicted. "You will cut contact with him," he ordered sharply, falling back into his cold commanding tone. "From today onward, you have no friends outside my circle. No one gets to have access to you except me." Seraphina's head lifted, a rare spark of defiance flashing in her soft eyes. "You cannot isolate me completely. That's cruel, Elias. Cruel." He laughed bitterly. "Cruelty is waking up every morning for 5 years wondering if the woman you love is alive or dead. Cruelty is waiting for someone who never comes back. Don't talk to me about cruelty." He turned away, his shoulders rigid with suppressed emotion. "You belong to me now. Every part of you. No exceptions." The rest of the morning passed in heavy silence. Elias left for his office shortly after breakfast, but he left 2 security guards posted at every exit of the penthouse. Seraphina was effectively locked inside, a prisoner in a gilded cage. She wandered the empty halls aimlessly, running her fingers along the cold marble walls, staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the sprawling Manhattan skyline. She had everything luxurious at her fingertips: expensive clothes, fine food, a penthouse view most people could only dream of, but she had no freedom, no identity, no peace. In the afternoon, she found a quiet art studio tucked away in one of the guest wings of the penthouse. It was empty, clean, equipped with high-end paints and canvases, clearly prepared for someone who loved art. For the first time since she had been dragged into Elias's world, Seraphina felt a flicker of hope. She pulled off the restrictive silk dress, changed into a simple cotton lounge set, and began to paint. She painted what she always painted: soft botanicals, wild roses, delicate ivy, sunlight filtering through leaf petals. Quiet, gentle things, the opposite of the cold, brutal world she was trapped in. She lost herself in the work for hours, her worries melting away with every brushstroke. She did not hear Elias return home. He stood in the doorway of the art studio for a long while, watching her in silence. He had never seen Vivienne paint. Vivienne loved parties, spotlight, fame, luxury. She was loud, vibrant, craving attention at all times. This girl, this Seraphina, was different. She sat bathed in soft afternoon sunlight, her hair loose, her expression calm and focused, completely at peace with the quiet art in front of her. There was no pretense, no drama, no hunger for validation. Just pure, gentle stillness. It fascinated him. It unsettled him. It drew him in despite every part of him that wanted to hate her for being a liar, for being a ghost of his lost love. "You paint beautifully." Elias's voice broke the quiet air suddenly. Seraphina jumped slightly, turning around quickly, her brush hovering mid-air. A faint blush rose to her cheeks, caught off guard by his quiet tone: no anger, no mockery, just genuine observation. I like painting," she admitted softly. "It's the only thing that's ever truly mine." Elias stepped into the room, his eyes drifting down to the canvas. The painting was soft, delicate, full of quiet warmth, a world away from the harsh, cold elite life he knew. "Vivienne never cared for stillness," he said quietly, almost to himself. "She always needed noise. Always needed the world watching her." Seraphina's heart ached. She wanted to scream, "I am not her. I am always quiet. I am always hidden." But she stayed silent, her gaze falling back to her painting. Elias moved closer, stopping beside her easel. His gaze fell to her hands, soft, stained faintly with paint, delicate and artistic. Without thinking, without intending to be gentle, he reached out and brushed a stray strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was light, hesitant, almost tender. Seraphina froze completely, her breath stalling in her chest. Her eyes lifted to his face in shock, finding his gaze locked intensely on hers. The air shifted instantly. The cold hatred between them melted into something warmer, more dangerous, a quiet, forbidden attraction neither of them could deny. Elias's thumb brushed gently over her cheekbone, his eyes darkening with a conflicted longing he could no longer suppress. "You feel different," he whispered hoarsely. "You act different. You are different." For a heartbeat, the truth hovered between them, so close it could have broken free. But then Elias pulled away abruptly, his expression hardening again, shuttering the vulnerable softness away. He turned on his heel and walked toward the door, his voice cold once more. "Finish your painting. Tomorrow you attend the Voss charity dinner. You will behave like Vivienne. No mistakes." He left the room quickly, escaping the confusing feelings she stirred in him. Seraphina stood frozen in the fading sunlight, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. He was starting to notice. He was starting to see her. But the closer he got to the truth, the more dangerous everything became. Chapter 5: Public Scandal and Hidden Grievance. The next evening, the Manhattan elite gathered once more for the annual Voss corporate charity dinner, a high-profile event covered by every major social media and luxury magazine in New York. Every socialite, entrepreneur, and celebrity in the city was present, dressed in couture, ready to gossip, ready to watch the mysterious return of Elias Voss's long-lost fiancée. Seraphina stood in the penthouse lobby, dressed in a breathtaking black silk gown Elias had selected for her. The dress was elegant, sharp, designed to command attention, Vivienne style, not hers. Her hair was styled in a sleek updo, exposing her slender neck and delicate collarbones. She wore minimal jewelry, only a thin diamond necklace that glinted faintly against her skin. When Elias stepped beside her, his eyes darkened with undisguised appreciation. For a moment, he forgot the anger, the betrayal, the 5 years of pain. He only saw the woman beside him, stunning, graceful, his. "Perfect," he murmured. But Seraphina knew he was not complimenting her. He was complimenting the ghost she was forced to embody. They arrived at the venue together, stepping out of the black luxury car side by side, flash cameras exploding instantly, capturing every second of their entrance. The crowd erupted into quiet murmurs. "It's Vivienne Moore. She's really back after 5 years. How did she dare return after abandoning Elias like that? Look how he's staring at her, he's still completely obsessed." Every whisper sliced through Seraphina like a blade. Every judgmental glance burned into her skin. She had done nothing wrong. Yet she was being branded a traitor, a heartless lover, a socialite, who had abandoned a devoted man for greed. Elias kept a firm hand on her waist as they walked through the crowd, his grip possessive, unyielding, silently telling the entire room she belonged to him. He guided her through greetings and formal conversations, answering questions for her whenever she hesitated, covering her quiet uncertainty with his cold confidence. To the public eye, they were the reunited golden couple, tragic, passionate, destined. Only Seraphina knew the truth beneath the facade. They were built on lies, misunderstanding, and stolen identity. Halfway through the night, a group of socialite women cornered her by the champagne bar, their smiles sweet, but their eyes sharp with judgment. "Vivienne, darling, we've missed you so much." One of them trilled, tilting her head falsely. "Where have you been hiding all these years? We all thought you'd run off with a billionaire overseas and forgotten poor Elias completely." The hidden insult was clear. Another woman laughed softly. "You must have had quite the adventure. Though I must say, it's rather cruel to leave a man as devoted as Elias waiting for half a decade. Do you plan to stay this time? Or will you vanish again once you're bored?" Their words were laced with malice, jealousy, and judgment. Seraphina's throat tightened. She had no right to defend herself. She could not tell them she was not Vivienne, that she was innocent of all these accusations. So she stood there silently, bearing the humiliation, her eyes stinging with suppressed tears. Before she could crumble under the weight of their words, a warm, familiar voice cut through the mocking laughter. "I think you've said quite enough." Julian Cross stepped forward, tall and calm in his tailored navy suit, his gentle expression sharp with protective anger. He stood beside Seraphina instantly, shielding her from the gossiping women, his presence steady and safe. "This young woman has no obligation to explain her private life to any of you," Julian said evenly, his tone firm. "Your baseless speculation and cruelty is unbecoming of this event." The socialites fell silent, flustered and embarrassed, scrambling to excuse themselves and disperse. Once they were alone, Julian turned to Seraphina, his soft eyes filled with concern. "Are you all right, Sarah?" The nickname was private, intimate, the name only he used for her, the name that belonged only to her. Seraphina's eyes flooded with tears. For the first time in days, she felt seen. Felt known. "I'm fine," she whispered shakily. "Thank you, Julian." "You're not fine," he said quietly, his gaze sweeping over her stressed face. "He's trapping you. He's forcing you to live in your sister's shadow, punishing you for sins you never committed. Let me take you away from here. Right now." He reached out, gently grasping her wrist, ready to pull her from the gilded nightmare she was trapped in. But before Seraphina could respond, a cold, deadly voice cut through them. "Take your hand off her." Elias stood a few feet away, his entire body rigid with rage. His eyes were black with possessive fury, staring straight at Julian's hand on Seraphina's wrist. The entire room seemed to cool instantly. The tension between the two men was explosive, cold billionaire obsession versus gentle doctor protection. Julian did not flinch. He did not let go. He met Elias's furious gaze steadily. "She's not your property, Voss. Let her go. She's mine." Elias's voice was low, lethal. "She came back to me. She stays with me." "She is not Vivienne," Julian said sharply, finally speaking the truth out loud for everyone nearby to hear. "You've got the wrong sister. You're torturing the wrong woman." The words hung in the air, shocking and deafening. Elias's gaze snapped to Seraphina's face, his eyes wild with conflict, anger, and desperate confusion. "Is this true?" he whispered, his voice breaking for the first time all night. "Tell me the truth. Right now." Chapter 6, The Half-Truth. Seraphina's world froze entirely. All eyes in the surrounding crowd drifted toward them, curious and burning. The whispers grew louder, the speculation wilder. "Wrong sister. There are two more twins. Elias Voss has been keeping the wrong woman all this time." Her heart hammered violently against her ribs, panic gripping her throat so tightly she could barely breathe. This was the moment. The moment the truth could break free, the moment she could finally be freed from Vivienne's shadow. But she knew the cost. If she admitted she was Seraphina, not Vivienne, Elias would destroy her family. Ruin everything to punish her for the lies she had supposedly told him. He would never believe she was innocent. He would only believe she had deliberately tricked him, toyed with his grief, mocked his 5 years of suffering. She would lose everything. Her family would lose everything. Tears blurred her vision as she stared into Elias's furious, broken eyes. Her voice trembled, weak and broken. Julian squeezed her wrist gently, silently urging her to tell the truth, to save herself. But Seraphina closed her eyes. She chose sacrifice. "He's wrong," she whispered shakily. The words cut through the room like a knife, shocking Julian and crushing Elias's rising doubt. "I'm Vivienne," she lied, the taste of bitter ash filling her mouth. "Julian is overstepping. He's trying to create trouble between us. Julian's face fell instantly, his eyes filling with hurt and disappointment. Sarah. Don't call me that, she said sharply, her voice breaking. You don't know what you're talking about. Stay out of my life. She knew she was hurting the only person who had ever protected her. She knew she was pushing him away to save him from Elias's wrath. But it was the only way. Elias's rigid body relaxed slightly, the furious doubt in his eyes fading back into cold possession. He stepped forward, pulling Seraphina firmly into his side, his arm wrapped tightly around her waist, claiming her publicly. Stay away from her, Dr. Cross, Elias warned darkly. Next time you interfere in our relationship, I will not be so lenient. Julian stared at Seraphina, his gaze sad and knowing. He understood her choice. He knew she was sacrificing herself to protect her family. But it did not stop the pain in his eyes. Without another word, Julian turned and walked away, leaving her alone in the cold, cruel world of Manhattan's elite. As soon as he was gone, Elias dragged Seraphina toward the exit, his grip bruising, his stride furious and unforgiving. The crowd watched them leave in stunned silence, every eye burning into her back. The car ride home was terrifyingly quiet. Elias said nothing the entire drive, staring out the window with a cold, unreadable expression, his knuckles white with suppressed rage. The second they entered the penthouse, he slammed the door shut and spun her around to face him. His hands gripped her shoulders tightly, his eyes blazing with stormy emotion. Why did he say that? He demanded hoarsely. Why did he call you Sarah? Why did he claim you're the wrong sister? Seraphina's lower lip trembled. She forced herself to hold his gaze, to keep lying even though every part of her soul screamed in pain. He's obsessed with me, she whispered, crafting the lie seamlessly. He's been trying to come between us for years. He knows how much you love me. He wants me for himself. He'll say anything to break us apart. Elias stared at her intensely, searching for any sign of deceit. But Seraphina's eyes were glistening with genuine tears, her expression fragile and desperate, every emotion raw and real. He could not tell the difference between her pain and Vivienne's guilt. After a long, torturous moment, his grip on her shoulders loosened slightly. His voice dropped to a broken, exhausted whisper. Don't ever let him touch you again. Don't ever let him come between us again. Seraphina nodded silently, tears spilling down her cheeks. Elias pulled her into his chest suddenly, wrapping his arms tightly around her, holding her like she might disappear again at any second. His embrace was desperate, possessive, painfully vulnerable. I can't lose you again, he muttered into her hair, his voice raw. I won't survive it. Seraphina stood frozen in his arms, her heart splitting open in agony. He was holding the wrong person. Loving the wrong sister. Begging the wrong woman not to leave him. And she had to stay trapped in this lie forever. Chapter 7, The Return of the Ghost. 3 days passed in tense, fragile peace. Elias kept Seraphina close at all times. He took her to his office, let her sit quietly in his private study while he worked, watched her paint in the afternoons, dined with her every night in silence. His cruelty softened, little by little. He stopped snapping at her. Stopped threatening her family. He began leaving her little gifts, high-quality paint sets, rare botanical books, soft blankets for her studio corner. He did not understand why he craved her quiet presence so deeply. Why her gentle calm soothed the endless restlessness in his soul. He told himself it was because she was Vivienne. Because he had missed her for 5 years. But deep down, he knew the truth. This girl was nothing like the woman he had loved and lost. He was falling for a stranger's soul while clinging desperately to a ghost's face. Seraphina felt the shift in him too. Felt his coldness melting into quiet, confused tenderness. It gave her hope. Torturous, dangerous hope. She began to believe, foolishly, that maybe they could build something real out of all the lies. Maybe he could love her one day, even if he never knew her real name. But fate had always been cruel to her. On the fourth night, everything shattered. It was late, nearly midnight. Seraphina was sitting on the balcony of the penthouse, staring out at the quiet Manhattan skyline, wrapped in a soft sweater, her hair loose in the cool night breeze. Elias had fallen asleep early after a long day of work, leaving her alone with her quiet thoughts. The penthouse was silent, peaceful, for once free of tension. Until the doorbell rang. It was a rare sound. Elias's penthouse almost never received visitors at this hour. Seraphina frowned, standing up slowly, walking toward the front entrance. The security guard's voice came through the intercom, tight and stunned. "Mr. Voss, there's a Miss Vivienne Moore here to see you. She says she's returning home." Seraphina's blood turned to ice. Her entire body went rigid, every muscle freezing in pure, unadulterated terror. No. It was impossible. Vivienne was gone. She had disappeared for 5 years. But the guard's words repeated in her mind, echoing like a death sentence. Vivienne Moore is here. The real Vivienne. Her sister. The original ghost. Before Seraphina could process the horror of what was happening, the front door of the penthouse pushed open. A woman stepped inside, tall, glamorous, confident, radiating the bold, magnetic charisma Seraphina had spent her entire life living in the shadow of. She had the exact same face, but everything else was different. Vivienne's eyes were sharp, bright, calculating. Her smile was practiced, beautiful, and utterly ruthless. She wore a scarlet red gown that clung perfectly to her figure, her hair styled in glamorous waves, her makeup bold and striking. She looked like every inch the socialite Queen Manhattan had remembered and missed. Vivienne's gaze locked instantly onto Seraphina, standing frozen in the hallway, wearing her face, living in her penthouse, occupying her place beside Elias Voss. A cold, knowing smile curved her red lips. "Hello, little sister," Vivienne purred softly, her voice sweet and deadly. "Did you really think you could steal my life forever?" Behind her, down the hallway, a bedroom door creaked open. Elias stood in the doorway, half asleep, disoriented, until his gaze fell on the woman in red. His entire world stopped. His eyes widened in pure, stunned disbelief. For 5 years, he had grieved one ghost. Now 2 identical faces stood in his penthouse. 2 sisters. 2 truths. 5 years of buried lies. And in that terrifying, silent moment, everything he had believed, everything he had mourned, everything he had clung to, crumbled completely.